So you want to start scanning your own film. Great, there's many great reasons for that. And you may be like me and you don't own a professional scanning setup. But you may be thinking, well, I do own a great phone. Can I maybe scan my film with that? And you may be like me looking for answers and guidance online, but I really wasn't satisfied with a lot of the results I found. See, many of those people who make videos about scanning film with a smartphone already own great scanning setups, and they don't really actually try to get great results out of their phones, so they can go back using their professional gear. See, I'm different, I'm relatable. So in this video you will see me trying to build my own film scanning setup on as little of a budget as possible. And I do own a digital camera, but I don't own a macro lens for that camera. I still tried using it with just a normal telephoto lens, but when that, spoilers, didn't work out too well, I thought, well, am I gonna have to buy a new lens now? But then I remembered that my Google Pixel 8 Pro is considered a very good phone for macro photography. It has a built-in macro mode. And I thought, well, before I'm gonna buy new gear that I maybe don't even need, let's just see what I can do with this. So in this video I will try to get the best possible scans of my 35mm film with my phone. So in this video I will show you the best possible results I was able to get. I will show you how I get those results. I will show you realistic results of what you are able to get when you actually try to make the phone scans look good. And I will show you the very real shortcomings that still exist when trying to scan film with your phone. Because yeah, the guys from the beginning of this video are kind of right. Smartphones are still very limited for scanning film. And I will just spoil some of the results for you right now because I don't want to clickbait you in this video or set your expectations too high. And if you don't really like those results, then same. And spoilers, I did end up buying the macro lens, and we will compare really this more professional setup to my smartphone later on in this video. But still, in this video I still want to find out what is actually possible if you actually put the effort into trying to make the scans from your smartphone look as good as possible. And how big of a difference is there really between scans taken with your smartphone and scans taken with a camera with a macro lens? What are you still doing there? Let's go! Where even are you? Oh, there you are. Come here. Welcome back to another video where I have no idea what I'm doing. What a surprise. But it's gonna have to be done. See, imagine you were one of my film cameras. We went out on a shoot, you did your very best, and this is how the scans turn out. See, that's a problem I'm facing right now. I live in a pretty rural area and there isn't too many places I can get my film developed and scanned at. And I tried a few different labs, and I mean, you've seen the results in my last few videos, like it's not good. And really the only other option I have right now is to go to a postal office and then send my film to a different city to get it developed there. And really, at that point it's just too expensive and too annoying. So I decided I would try to start scanning my own film, but that's easier said than done. So what is our starting point? As you may know if you've been watching some of my prior videos, recently I've been really disappointed with the film scans I got from my lab. They were so bad that I didn't want to look at them, I didn't want to post them, I didn't want to show them to anybody. And at some point I didn't even really pick up my film cameras anymore, because why would I if I'm not even gonna like the pictures? So at some point I realized if I'm really gonna continue doing film photography, I'm gonna need to start scanning my own film. That's the only way that's really gonna happen probably. And that has other benefits as well. So for example, I wasn't able to find any film lab near me that would digitize my black and white film. They would print it, but they wouldn't give me any digital files of it. Which, I mean, I like hanging pictures on the wall, I guess, but for what I usually use my photography for, making these videos, posting them on social media, sending them to friends and family, like, I need digital files. So that's why I never really did a lot of black and white photography, because I couldn't really use those pictures for anything anyways. And another big benefit of scanning your own film is that when your film is getting scanned at a lab, the person who is scanning it doesn't really know how the place you photographed really looked like. So oftentimes I had to just go through every picture and edit them because they just look completely wrong. They didn't resemble the actual place at all. And first I thought, well, I'm just gonna do really the most popular option on YouTube right now for scanning film, which is using my digital camera with a macro lens. But I don't own a macro lens. And the problem with that is, to get good resolution out of your film scans, you need to get your camera as close as possible to the film, and you need the film to fill out as much of the frame as possible, which with my Tamron lens really isn't that possible. Luckily, I just got this adapter that lets me use my grandpa's old Canon lenses on my Sony ZV E10, which I will make entire videos about soon. I have some nice shoots planned with those lenses, but for now this gives me access to this 200mm telephoto lens, which still isn't really the greatest lens, but it will give me a decent resolution on my scans, higher than my film-less scans at least. So I thought, well, maybe that's going to be enough for me. And I started out by scanning black and white film, and that actually came out surprisingly good. Not the greatest sharpness, not the greatest resolution, but actually kind of usable. Great, now let's try some color film. I'm a bit worried, so you see the film down here, and I don't know if you can tell this little blue speck right there, so this might be chalked. So my biggest fear with this lens came true. It had some really weird blue spots on the film scans, which I'm not a lens doctor, but I think that that's probably because all of the blue specks that are physically on the lens, and I can't really show it on the camera because my camera won't really even pick it up, but there's just a bunch of blue spots all over the lens, which I think is just some sort of coating being damaged. So yeah, that would result in really weird spots and color shifts and whatever in my film scans, which really the scan won't be able to be used for scanning color film. But just as I was about to start just trying to scan my film on the Tamron lens, I had an idea. Guys, hold on, I might be even dumber than I thought. So I was just about to slap on my camera with the Tamron lens to see if that would work better. And as I was filming myself doing that with my phone said, you know, it's on autofocus. I said, oh, I'm gonna go into macro mode. I was like, macro mode? And I completely forgot the whole time I was using my new phone to film myself, setting up this camera to take pictures of my film. And I completely forgot, because it's a new phone, that this phone has a macro mode, which I'm gonna try now, because I think that should give me a better resolution on my film scans than this camera ever could with any of the lenses I own. And to be honest, if I could use my phone for that, then I don't think I would buy a macro lens just for film scanning. But let's test it. Well, it's been a while, and I also did film the first time around. I tried doing film scans with my phone, but as you can probably expect, I made some mistakes back then, and as you might be able to tell by the state of my hair and all of that, I have pretty much just spent the last 2 days kind of obsessing over all of this, trying again and again and again, and kind of refining my film scanning workflow, I guess. And since I promised you to kind of just tell you what the best possible quality is you can get out of your phone when film scanning, I thought I would just film this and really show you the best possible workflow that I've been able to come up with over the past days. So what you're gonna need is a kind of LED light table like this one. I won't recommend any like brands or anything like this. I just ordered this off the internet. I'm not even really happy with it. I might actually want to buy a different one at some point, maybe return this one. But you just need one of those. I won't recommend any specific ones because I don't think I found the best one yet. Also, when doing film scans, your enemy is gonna be dust, so feel free to kind of just clean it off before you start. Okay. You see what I mean? I can't even control it. So this kind of film holder is optional. If you can get your film to lay super flat on the table, then that shouldn't be any problems. That should be fine. For me, it doesn't. You can see it's kind of curled. You're gonna need it to be flat, so I have this film holder to do that. Also, I don't know if you actually need gloves, but I read on the internet that you should wear gloves to not get any fingerprints on your film. So I will. Now let's get to setting up your phone. And first of all, we should talk about what kind of capabilities your phone needs to have to actually work, because not every phone is going to be able to get the same results, of course, but there is some things your phone should be able to do for all of this to work. Oh yeah, when doing this kind of scanning with a digital camera, you're going to need a tripod for sure. With a phone, you might actually get away without a tripod. We're going to get into that, but I'm just going to use one because we want the best possible results, so let's just not risk any shake happening. So first of all, you're going to need to make sure that everything is lined up correctly, so you need the film and the phone to be as parallel as possible. Mine has this really convenient kind of crosshair right there that I can use to now mount it into my tripod. Okay, now with this, of course, we're gonna need to do a few things. So one capability that your phone is gonna need to have is it's gonna have to be able to shoot some sort of raw format. I think there is probably some apps out there that promise to be able to convert color negatives to positives from JPEGs. I have not tested any of these and I don't really trust them, but if you're gonna want to go the way that I do and convert the images in some sort of photo editing software, then you're gonna need to be doing a lot of photo editing and a lot of editing of the colors, and using JPEGs for that is just gonna not turn out too great. So you really want to be able to get raw pictures. Let me just jump in here real quick. So I do see that many of the people using phones for film scanning here on YouTube and on other social media platforms do use the JPEGs out of the camera. And I did also try that, and it is possible to get good results with that. That would totally be good enough to post on social media, and where unless you really zoom in and do some pixel peeping, you're not gonna see the difference. But I still wouldn't recommend doing that, because in working with JPEGs, you really have a lot less wiggle room, both in taking the pictures and in editing them. So for one, in my experience, it is a lot harder to get accurate colors out of these scans. And you're going to see this as well if you watch some of that other content, that a lot of those scans turn out usually pretty blue or purple. And I have that same experience because there just is less room for really color grading to make it look like real life. And in my experience, there also just is a higher risk of the scans going wrong compared to using raw files, because you just have less room to work with and less room to edit. And stuff like this can just happen. Wow, this is already the ugliest picture I've ever seen. Yeah, no, for sure. Beautiful. Wow. You should see when I actually get now closer, it automatically jumps into this macro mode. We're gonna make sure to take it off auto ISO, just lock the ISO nice and low to reduce noise in our scans, to get as little noise as possible. The good thing about this is that the shutter speed, which I'm just gonna leave up to the phone for now, really doesn't matter. But there is one problem that we're gonna have with using a phone, just this. When scanning with a digital camera, typically you want to stop down the lens, so use a tighter aperture, because really all camera lenses are gonna perform better, be sharper when they're at like f8 to f10, usually some sort of that range. It's different from lens to lens, depends on the lens you're using, but you don't want to use it wide open at f2.8, f3, f3.5, something like that. My problem with this phone is, as you can see, it does show me the aperture, but I can't change it on this phone. And I think really on all phones it's impossible to change the aperture. And that could be a problem when film scanning. I can't actually test like how much of a problem it is, because of course I can't change the aperture, so I can't see what would be different and if it would be better if I was able to use a different aperture. I can test that, but be aware of that. That's why I'm saying you need a tripod when doing this with a camera, because with a camera you're going to use like f8, f10, something like this, and you're going to use the lowest ISO you can possibly use, which means you're going to need to use a very long shutter speed. So when I was doing the scans with my camera with the old telephoto lens, I was using about 1/4 of a second, something like this. For that you're really going to want to have a tripod. You see here we now have 1/200th of a second, which you probably could still handheld and really get sharp images, but I'm just not going to risk it. But that's kind of the reason why you don't necessarily really need a tripod for this, but I'm still going to do it to get more consistency. So here we have the film, and now what you're going to do is, oh yeah, theoretically you can set your white balance to the white balance of the light panel you're using. Problem here is, as I said, this light panel isn't too great, so the temperature value that's in the manual of this light panel is just kind of wrong and it doesn't match up. So I'm just using auto white balance and then white balancing everything in the editing software, which should also be fine. Now let's jump into manual focus, and you could try to autofocus this, but I've noticed with this phone the autofocus just drifts off and loses focus of the film strip, so I'm really trying to use manual focus. And now we will just see what is the closest we can get this manual focus. I like to leave myself a bit of wiggle room, and then we're gonna take this tripod and just go down, and really now you're just trying to find a point where the closest you can get to your film. And having focus picking on your phone is going to be really great for that, although it doesn't really seem to be doing a lot of focus peaking right now, but for that it's great to go out here where these kind of numbers are on your film, because they're focusing on the actual picture isn't too great. So I would recommend you use this kind of outer border of the film to focus on. It's going to be easier to see if it's sharp. Now what I also like to do to just reduce the camera shake or the potential of camera shake existing is just use a bit of a timer. Looking good. Okay, so we're about to be able to start scanning. One more tip. So I've noticed that on this phone, and this is a problem that I've been having just with general photography as well, sometimes when shooting into a bright light source, as we're doing right now, with this phone, you may get some weird reflections in the camera to where sometimes you can see stuff like double and have just a weird light reflection that has ruined some of the scans I did the first time around. You're gonna want to make sure that your phone camera isn't seeing any of the light that's not going right through the film. So now direct white light from the LED panel if possible. I think this setup isn't quite ideal. There is film holders and light sources that are gonna cut off all of the light that is not going through the film, which is really probably what you should be using to minimize the risk of such a mistake happening. I don't have access to something like that right now, so I'm just trying to really position the camera in a way to where you can see now on the screen you can't see any of the white light, and I'm hoping that that's gonna be enough to kind of just help. What I like to do, which is just for the kind of way I'm doing my conversion in Affinity Photo later on, is leave some piece of the border in there, because it's gonna make it easier to convert these to positives later on for me with the workflow I'm doing. By the way, I'm not going to include any tutorials on how I convert these negatives to positives in Affinity Photo. If you want to do the same thing, there is tutorials out there. And I also just learned this like 3 days ago now, so I'm by no means an expert. Also, there is other software, of course, like Negative Lab Pro is one that's really popular, Lightroom, Photoshop, and other kind of software that you can use to convert these negatives into positives. And I think my workflow with Affinity Photos by no means the best. But yeah, I won't include any tutorials on this in this video because I don't really know what I'm doing yet either. There is tutorials out there though, if you also want to use Affinity Photo for this. But just for me to make it easier, I do like to include just a little bit of the film border in the scans, because that's going to make it easier for me. One more tip, I almost forgot. If you're loading the film in, you're going to want to have such a thing, a little blower that you can use to now go ahead and blow off dust off the film. Because again, dust is your enemy. So look into that maybe. Okay, and with that we're ready to start scanning. But I'm not going to film this. Well, I may just leave the screen capture on my phone, but I'm going to turn off this camera, because now what I'm going to do is of course I have lights going to light this video, which I'm now going to turn off, because you want to minimize the risk of any light maybe bouncing off your film, reflecting in weird ways and causing weird effects. Well, I just got done scanning the film that I wanted to scan, and I just grabbed myself some coffee, so let me take a little break right now and let me throw you back to me 3 days ago, when I just got done scanning my first 2 rolls and seeing the first results and getting a little evil surprise. And just like that, the topic of this video has kind of changed, just from can I make my own film scans on a budget to can I maybe use my phone for that? Because from what I've seen so far, in the general online film photography community, scanning film with a phone seems to be pretty frowned upon, I guess. And I've already kind of found out some reasons why that is, and we're gonna get into that. But for the most part, if I'm gonna probably have to buy an entirely new lens just for film scanning, I guess a macro lens can also be used just for general macro photography, but I'm gonna take a long and hard look at my phone if that's maybe gonna be able to do the same thing, because that would be a pretty big money saver. So now we have all of these scans of the negatives, which we're now gonna have to turn into positives. And that's what we're going to do now. And I'm going to take a few pictures both from the phone and from the camera, and then we are going to kind of compare which ones are better. And then I'm probably just going to do the rest from whichever one was better, because I'm not doing all that. So we will do the conversion in Affinity Photo, which also means that I won't have access to Negative Lab Pro, which is a software that really most of the people who do scanning with their cameras use to convert their images. But I don't have that. It's still completely possible to convert these pictures in Affinity Photo, but it's a bit more difficult and maybe a bit more inconsistent, and it's gonna take a lot of practice. And also I watched some tutorials on how people are doing that, and there seems to be like different ways, different approaches, and yeah, let's just see what I can do. The first time around it's probably not going to be perfect, but it's more so just about seeing if it's possible at all. So I only watched tutorials on how to do a conversion of color film. So this one I'm just gonna kind of guess, but it's gonna be fine. So we're gonna need to tell that it's a black and white picture. Then let's just get this straight. Well, that's the wrong way around. So I just cropped away all of the unnecessary stuff. Why is this the wrong way around? Okay, well, could I get the full resolution yet? This is not... I don't understand how that happens. Why is that not the full resolution? But that's not enough resolution. You're not gonna see anything on there. Well, stop the recording again. Well, it's the next morning and I think this video so far has been pretty bad. So last night I wanted to try finishing this video by going through all of the scans, editing them, converting them to positives, and yeah. And I wanted to compare the phone scans to the camera scans. Scanning film with a phone seems to be pretty frowned upon, I guess, and I've already kind of found out some reasons why that is. Well, the reason for that is because phone cameras are just not that good. Just because it says 50 megapixels on the screen doesn't mean that that's what you're getting. Okay, now let's discuss real quick what are the shortcomings of the Google Pixel 8 Pro for film scanning. Well, when I started doing this, I was wondering why the resolution of the RAW files of my film scans was lower than what I'm usually used to out of this camera. So I did a bit of research, and according to the World Wide Web and various forums, what's happening is this. The macro mode of this camera is using the ultra wide camera with its 48 megapixel sensor. Great. But it's essentially cropping into that image, which would explain why we're getting lower resolutions. All of this gets even worse if you zoom in past the one-time setting in macro mode, which applies additional digital zoom, which was a mistake I made the first time around, where I was wondering why am I getting like full HD files. That's why. So make sure to be on the widest setting possible in macro mode if you want to use a Google Pixel 8 Pro for film scanning. So the highest megapixel count I was able to get out of this phone when scanning my film was 11.8 megapixels. Crop away the film borders and we're getting around 6 megapixels worth of actual image, which is a fine resolution. It's more than the film scans from my lab. It would be more than enough for posting on YouTube or Instagram. But resolution isn't everything. You also need sharpness and a sharp lens, and if we compare the sharpness of this phone to my lab scans and also to the scans I will later make on an actual macro lens on my digital camera, we can really see that the sharpness really is a lot lower. And yes, the lab scans look like they've probably been sharpened in some sort of software, artificially sharpened, but I did the same with my phone scans in Affinity Photo when I was converting them to make it fair, and I was not able to get anywhere near the same amount of detail out of these scans. This is especially noticeable at the corners of the frame, so at the edges of the frame of the phone scans you can really see the sharpness falling off a lot. So yeah, that's why I was not happy with the scans out of the phone, and I did decide to buy a macro lens to use on my Sony ZV E10 for scanning, because I really just wasn't happy with these results. and I wanted to try getting something better. Now, this is the point where my knowledge of cameras gets a bit limited, and as I said, I just researched all of this stuff yesterday. So I just learned all of this, and I don't know if there's maybe anything that I just don't know right now that I'm gonna find out about later, or if any of you have more knowledge on phone cameras and stuff like that, or on film scanning. I mean, I just started doing it this week. Feel free to drop it in the comments. And in case there is anything that is in this video that ends up being outdated at some point, once I start doing more film scans and I gain more experience, or once I learn more about camera sensors and all of that, in case there's anything in this video that's outdated, I will have a pinned comment in the comment section correcting anything that might be wrong at some point, because this is all still pretty new knowledge for me. And I hear you asking, why don't you just use the ultra wide lens on this camera without the macro mode to get all of the 48 megapixel out of this phone? Nobody asked that probably, but I did try it. I mean, look at this. Look at the corner sharpness here. It gets even worse. So the sharpness is the biggest shortcoming, and for me really a deal breaker, because if I'm getting less sharpness than the lab scans, then there isn't really any point in doing this. The point is to get better scans than my lab gives me. There is also some other stuff. So phone cameras are pretty notorious for having very wide angle lenses, and I mean, on this one we have to use the widest possible setting to get good resolution, which means in turn that no matter how much you try to really get all of the film perfectly lined up, parallel lines just may not be parallel anymore. This is just because of the ultra-wide cameras, and I often found myself having to crop out large parts of the image or messing up the perspective of the image because of this, which is just because it's wide-angle lenses, which from what I've been seeing online isn't really what gets recommended for film scanning. People want to use lenses that aren't too wide. But yeah, I mean, we gave it an honest try, but really I'm just not happy with the results. I mean, you can see the results right here, and if you think they look good enough for you, then feel free to try this. I mean, this video probably isn't a full comprehensive tutorial on how to use a phone for film scanning, because I just started doing it this week. So, but if you want to try it yourself, I hope this video can maybe be a bit of a starting point for you to build upon. But really, I mean, yeah, let's just move on and try getting good scans. And with that, it finally came time once again for me to unpack some new gear, which, as we all know, is the most fun part of doing photography. All jokes aside though, I am really happy with this decision, and I will just show you some of the comparisons of the phone scans to the scans with my new lens right now. Now, to be honest with you, the difference between those images is really big when editing them in my editing software. Now that I'm making this video, I am noticing that, you know, once you're done making these images smaller, editing them, rendering them, these differences do become a bit harder to see, and let's see how much of this difference you will be able to spot once these pictures actually appear on your screens. I think I would totally be happy posting these phone scans on social media. I don't think you would really be able to spot much of a difference, but with the detail of these scans being really a lot less than the lab scans, yes, there is less noise, but apply some noise reduction to the lab scans and there really isn't much of a visible difference. I don't think I would have continued doing phone scans. I would have preferred the lab scans over that, even though they have less resolution. I still think that, in my opinion, they are better. Now, with the new macro lens, I mean, I'm really impressed. I went for a used Sony 30mm f3.5 macro lens, which you can get for pretty cheap. It's a pretty old lens as well, but I'm really happy with the performance. The only kind of downside I can notice so far is that there is a drop off of sharpness in the corners for sure. It's noticeable, but that's kind of to be expected with a lens of this price point, and I'm still really happy with this performance and with these scans, because I get high resolution, less noise, and really no lag in detail compared to the lab scans. So I can already feel my motivation for film photography rising again when I'm looking at these scans right here. And I'm really excited for the pictures I'm gonna take this year. I'm really happy because for a while I really thought this video would be kind of a failure with me never being able to get better scans than the lab scans, but I think I'm now at a point where I am really happy with the scans I'm able to produce. For sure I'm really happy with the hardware side of things. Software side of things, I'm gonna have to put in some more work. I'm gonna notice that the colors just look kind of different on all of these scans, because They have been taken with different cameras, yes, but also just the whole conversion in Affinity Photo. I for sure have some stuff to learn there, or I might look into other softwares to use as well. But for sure, let me know in the comments, guys. What do you think of the difference of the phone scans and the camera scans? Do you even notice much of a difference here on YouTube once the video is on your screen? Do you think the phone scans are good enough? Have you ever tried scanning with your phone, or do you want to try it? If you have any tips, feel free to drop them down below. And yeah, we've been inside a lot in this video, but I promise you in the next video we will actually be out in the nature shooting. So stay tuned for that.